Hello and welcome to A Stitch in Time. Today is Tuesday, January 23rd, 2018, and this is episode 45. My name is Carol and I am known as Knits and Pearls on Ravelry. The show notes for this and every episode can be found on the blog and also in the episode thread in the Ravelry group. So if you don't find the answer you're looking for in either of those places, feel free to drop me a line on Ravelry or in the comments section on YouTube, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning in this week. Thank you so much for all of the kind comments I received after the last podcast. It's good to be back. It's nice to have been missed, so thanks for that. I've missed you too. In fact, I was going to wait until tomorrow to record to kind of get back into my regular Wednesday schedule. And the truth is, I just couldn't wait. And I figured today was as good a day as any. So here I am. Next week, I'll probably do it on Wednesday. So, got a little bit of business to take care of before we talk about knitting and such. The first thing is a reminder that the Agatha Christie Along will be drawing to a close at the end of January. And so if you have any works in progress, try and finish them up by then and post a picture of your finished project by January 31st. And then I'll close that thread and draw for the final prize in that knit along during the first podcast in February. Speaking of giveaways, as I mentioned last time I recorded, it's been just over a year since I began podcasting, so I'm celebrating my podiversary with a giveaway. The first thing up for grabs is this beautiful skein of yarn that was sent by a podcast viewer, very generous podcast viewer, to give away. And it is from West Yorkshire Spinners, called Exquisite, and it's a Falkland silk lace weight yarn in the Viscount colorway. And as I mentioned last time, I said I would make up a project bag to give away with it. Well, why make one project bag when you can make two? So there are a couple of choices. The winner will get to choose which one they like. So the first one, I went with a very feminine theme. It's kind of a Victorian collection of mirrors or brushes and gloves and hats and paisley fabric and all that goodness. And then a kind of a swirly, flowery design on the bottom. And then it's lined with kind of a, don't know how well you'll be able to see this. It's kind of a cream on cream kind of paisley print. And it has a pocket inside made from the bottom fabric. So if you're into feminine things, this might be your choice. And something a little more geometric is the second choice. You can see it's got this kind of almost, well, I guess it's almost doily-like, these little swirls. Kind of a teal bottom. And the lining is this kind of daisy print yarn. And then the pocket in there is the same as the bottom fabric. And then both of these are drawstring bags, which will nicely hold a lace weight shawl project. So yeah, the winner will have a choice of which project bag they would like to go along with this beautiful yarn. In order to win, you can leave a comment on any of the January 2018 blog posts with the episodes embedded. So last episode 44, this one 45, and there should be one more before February, so episode 46. So leave a comment in either of those three comment sections, and I will compile them and do a random number generator or draw a name out of a hat something like that. And I'll announce the winner during the first podcast in February also. So there are not that many entries yet, so we've got a really good chance to win. So be sure to come by the blog and leave a comment in either of those 3 episode posts, and I'll put the blog address again down here so you can find it easily. And I also put it in the YouTube description for the podcast. I always list the blog address there too. So I thought the first thing we talk about is what I am wearing. This is Lewin by Carol Feller, and I knit this as part of a knit along beginning in November 2016, but I didn't finish it until February of last year. It's knit from Blue Moon Fiber Arts, single silky targhee in the True Blood Red colorway. And I never wear this sweater, and I've realized why. I really love the color. I really like the yarn. I really like the stitch pattern. I'll kind of hold my sleeve up close. You can see it's a nice textured stitch pattern. I did long sleeves instead of the 3/4 length. I think that was suggested in the pattern. I think it fits really well through here, and I realized I like it to here. And what you can't see, maybe if I stand on my chair, we'll see, is you see it's comes up high in the front and low in the back. And I've realized I just don't like that style. I feel like it adds a lot of bulk here through my waist where I need it least. And it's also a bit of an A-line sweater, so it just widens me through that whole area. And isn't that flattering? So I think what I'm going to do is take it back to just below the bust and finish it like a more traditional sweater and add some shaping like here and in the back also, and just bring it in a little bit, finish with probably a wide garter stitch section, which is actually how the bottom of this one's finished, and just give it a more traditional length and shape. And then I think I'm going to love it because, I mean, like I say, I love everything about it from here down. So one of these days I'll get around to it. Maybe I'll try and do that before winter's over and actually get to wear it. But anyway, I realized I've never even put a finished object picture on my project page or finished off all the information there, and I think that's why, is I just haven't been really happy with the finished project. So definitely if I make those modifications, I'll be a lot more satisfied with it. Just drinking some jasmine tea today that I had gotten in my advent calendar. You know, I thought I would sort of just start the advent calendar all over again, and I haven't. I've kind of neglected it, so I should really get back to some of those teas while it's still winter and they kind of suit the weather, because there's some really good ones in there. Okay, let's get to the knitting. There isn't very much this week. My first project are the Lace and Twist Gloves by Silke Burgoyne. And they are in this Interweave Holiday Knits from Holiday 2009. And I knit them for my granddaughter's birthday. She's turning 13 at the beginning of February. And I realized after like a couple of stickers on here that I'm pretty sure she put on way back when I first bought this magazine. I think it was lying around the living room and she decided to decorate it. So I think it's kind of fitting that that her gift comes out of this one. So I knit them out of Sans Garn Sisu, in color 6733 turquoise. And turquoise never shows up really well on this camera, but it is just a real true turquoise color. I think this might have a little bit of a cooler tone that shows up, but it is a true turquoise. And there we go. Her hands are the same as mine. Actually, when I asked her, tried to figure out how big to make them, we held up our hands to each other and they basically were the same. So I can actually try these on. So give you an idea of how they look. So there we go. They're quite long, as you can see. It has this, as the name implies, a lace and twist pattern up the backs of them. I am 95% happy with them. I wish I'd made the thumbs just a row or two longer. They're usable, they're fine, but I feel like this could have benefited from a couple of more rows so that this sat just a little bit lower. I'll get her to try them on, and if it's something that's bothering her, I'll take the thumbs back and redo them the last few rows, but I'm hoping I don't have to. Just to add in that little bit would be really fiddly. This is the first pair of gloves I've ever actually completed. As I mentioned last podcast, I began the same pattern for myself years ago, right around the time that the magazine came out, and never got past. I think I got one thumb on one glove and maybe a finger, and then I was like, forget it. I didn't mind knitting them up till about here. I did not enjoy the whole finger and thumb part. I found it fiddly. And this is the first and the last pair of gloves I'll ever knit. Just kind of a nuisance. You have to pick up stitches around every finger and weave in the yarn under at the bottom. Plus you weave in the ends on each top of each finger. And as you can see, there's 10 altogether. After doing the first thumb and finger, thumbs and finger, I sort of made a deal with myself. I had to do one every day. And then when I got to the end, I did, I think, these two on one day and these two on the other, so I could just be done with them. So anyway, yeah, not crazy about knitting gloves, but pretty happy with how they've turned out. So I'm going to knit a hat, like a slouchy hat, to go with these, and I'm going to incorporate the same stitch pattern that's on the gloves into the hat. So I still need to kind of track down the pattern I'm going to use as a basis, and then have to do some math to figure out how to, incorporate the stitch pattern and such. So that's my next thing or one of the next things that I'll get going on. And then remember last week when I said I showed you this pattern for Swerve by Deborah Frank, and I told you that I had bought the yarn while I was away in Victoria, and that I had begun it on our holiday, and the needle size I was using was just too big and I wasn't happy with it, so I'd ripped it out, and I said, well, now I have it out of my system, I probably won't start it for a little while. Well, I did. I lied. I started it again. So the yarns I'm using are Baby Alpaca Silk by Drops. And that is in color 8108. You can see it's kind of a silvery gray. And then it alternates with this mohair yarn. I've got this one wound up so you can see the color progression really well. And this is called Concept Silk Mohair by Katya, and it's color 701. So let me preface this showing the actual saying this. Sometimes naming the episodes could be the hardest part. Sometimes I record a whole episode and it's not till I am absolutely forced to come up with a name that I do. Other times I have a name in mind before I start recording, and things kind of get themed around that. Well, I had two thoughts of what this episode should be called. One was True Confessions, because I'm about to tell you what I did with this project. And the other was Certifiable, because I figured once I told you what I had done with this project, you guys all think I'm a little crazy. So then I figured, why not just combine the two? So that's how I came up with Certifiable True Confessions. So the true confession is that I knit almost this entire shawl. Well, not entirely, but there are 5 sections of mohair. And I knit to the end of the 5th section. And then I decided I wanted this yarn colors to go in the opposite direction. And I ripped it all back to the beginning and started over again. Yes, I know it's crazy, but what can I say? I'm a process knitter, so it's not like I really mind the redoing so much. And if I do something, I really want to do it right. And if I'm not happy with it, as is evidenced by this Lewin sweater, I won't wear it. I won't use it. So, you can see from this is the yarn that I'm working with now. And you can see the middle part is almost got a brown cast to it. It's almost burgundy-ish. And then it fades out into more pink and the silvery gray and lavender. So when I started the shawl originally, this dark section in the middle is what was at the top. And because the wedges that you knit with it they get increasingly larger as you go along, there was a lot of this dark color over the first 2 or 3 wedges. And I just didn't like it. I wanted it to be more of a light to dark progression than a dark to light progression. So once I realized, after knitting the 5 wedges, how much yarn it would take to knit the wedges, I added a little bit for good measure, cut the yarn, frogged the shawl back to the first section of the alpaca, and then I started knitting it again from the opposite direction. So yes, crazy, but guess what? I'm a lot happier with it now. So here's the bit I'll try and explain and show you a little bit about what I mean about wedges. So you start with this first garter section here with the alpaca. And then you add in a stripe of the mohair, and you do short rows. So if you can see, it's thinner there. That's actually a really good look at it. You can see that this is a wedge. See how thin it gets at the bottom? And then it is followed just by a 2-row stripe. And then you do another section of the alpaca yarn, and then you begin to knit the next wedge. And that one is just a few rows. It's actually 4 rows wider than the previous one. So then you can see it comes over and becomes thinner here. And now I've done the third wedge, which is that one. It gets a little harder to show as it's getting bigger. And now I'm on the 4th one. And this one's starting to get a little bit of the lavender showing. So crazy, yes, but I'm a lot happier with it. Maybe this will give you an idea. It's hard because then it doesn't only spreads out so far on the needles. Let's see if I can show this side better. So the advantage to having done what I did is not only am I happier with where the colors are ending up, color progression, it also gave me an opportunity to lay this out off the needles and get a sense that actually it's going to be a really nice size to use as a scarf. I had seen this pattern in a Beehive Wool Shop in Victoria. I'd seen it knit up as a sample, and it was quite large and more of a shawl than a scarf. And I tend to wear my shawls as scarves when I can. But I dropped down, I think the pattern calls for a 6mm. 5.5mm needle, and I started it on a 5, and I found this section, this alpaca silk section, just too loose for my liking, and so I dropped down another 0.5mm to a 4.5. So it's not going to be as drapey and loose and large, but I like it how it is, and I'm going to like the size better. So yeah, for all that ripping back and stuff, I think it was worth it. It's a really easy project to work on because it is just garter stitch with short rows, and once you count off the first row of the short row wedge sections, it's very easy to keep track of where you are after that, and you don't really have to do anything more than count your garter ridges to know how many rows you've done. It's just been a great kind of, not entirely mindless, but a great, just sort of a more or less plain knitting project. Which brings me to something that's so unusual for me to say, but I have no plain vanilla socks on the needles, and I haven't, and since I finished my socks I showed you last week. That's very unusual for me. Usually I cast on a pair right away again, but this project has sort of taken that place for me. But I do need a travel project for this weekend, and so that's something I'm going to cast on this week, is to figure out which yarn. I don't know what yarn I'm going to use yet, but I'm going to cast on a pair of plain vanilla socks. So the two things in my near future are going to be the hat to match the gloves for my granddaughter, and then some plain vanilla socks. And I'll continue to work on that shawl too. I can feel some mohair fluff tickling me on my face. So before I talk about a little bit more about what I've been making, I thought I'd talk about a couple of acquisitions that I acquired this week. The first is this clock. Isn't that cute? I needed a new clock for my craft room. My old clock was, well, we got it for a wedding present, and that'll be 34 years ago this summer. So I've had it a long time, and even though the second hand still moved and it appeared like it was working, it just hasn't been keeping time. And when I get going in here sewing, I kind of lose track of time, so it's nice to have a clock that I can refer to. So it's up there over my doorway, and I hadn't sort of realized till I got it that it didn't have any numbers on it, but it doesn't, you know, it's fine. I can still tell time. And the other acquisition that most people wouldn't get that excited about, but I'm quite thrilled, is I got a new iron. It's a Tefal Aqua Speed 5335. If you can read that. My old iron wasn't so bad. It was a Mistrals, or I'm looking there and it's partly blocked. Anyway, it was a good iron for a long time, but the button that makes the steam come out was getting stuck off and on, and it's getting some wear around on the iron, the plate here. It was just time for a new one. So I started investigating, looking at different reviews for different irons. And there's such a range of reviews. You've got everything from someone raving about a certain model to other people absolutely slamming it. So I just kind of, had to take a chance like anyone else. And so there was a local store that had a really good sale on their irons, so I got it for half price, and it's a good one. Things I really like about it, the water reservoir is huge, so you don't have to fill it as often. And the cord is 12 feet long, which is fantastic, so I can plug it in here and keep my ironing board. My ironing board usually sits right here where I'm sitting. So I can keep my ironing board in here instead of moving it into the hallway closer to an outlet. And so I can actually just sew and iron all in the same section. It's got a nice burst of steam, plus the little spritz for if you want to dampen your fabric. And I also like it has an auto shut off, so I think it's 8 minutes if it's sitting upright, and it's very quick if you have it this way or on its side. It's also got a nice thing it's got a nice wide base, so it stays upright really well. And then this cord, you never get it kind of caught on the other part of your iron. So anyway, I've only had it, I guess, a week now. So I'm still getting, it's still new to me, but so far I really, really, really like it. And one reason I wanted a new iron is because I knew I wanted to be doing some more sewing. So besides the project bags that I showed you for the giveaway, I've been knitting or making some other ones. So I loved that. Oops, I caught my yarn in the zipper. Oh no. That's not good. Okay, I'll have to deal with that later, but I liked that first fabric so much. I made myself a zippered bag out of the same fabric. And what I was just showing as I caught my mohair yarn in the zipper pull here, so I'm going to have to fiddle with that after, hopefully without breaking it. Just lined with plain broadcloth, and I put a pocket. So I did that one, and then before Christmas and then I made one using the fabric from the other bag, also very much the same. And before Christmas, I had bought fabric to make. I loved this fabric so much that I thought it would look great with red, and I really wanted a zipper bag in the red, so I sewed that for myself. I just used a little bit of the leftover fabric from the drawstring bags that I had made before Christmas. And then I also made some drawstring bags with the red on the bottom, where before I had another pattern here was like a forest scene. So did a couple of those. And then I've had these, what do you call them? Not layer cakes, charm pack. So I had this charm pack for quite a while, and I visualized making bags with the black bottom and zippers. So I did that for myself also. And again, just put a broadcloth lining in it. This one is not without its issues. But then I did another one that I'm much happier with. I've had some people ask me about if I'm selling bags, and the answer is not yet. I sort of have an idea that at some point I would like to, put them up for sale on Etsy or something, but there's a lot of logistics to work out, like getting a shop open, and I'd like to get a logo, etc. So for now, I just sew them and kind of stockpile them. One day you may see them up for sale. If not, they'll go for gifts. But I know I can only give away so many project bags. They're kind of fun to make. I enjoy the whole process of kind of picking out the fabrics that can go together, and I love seeing them take shape. And sometimes how you visualize it when you've got the fabrics chosen and how they actually look when they're done, it can be quite different. But yeah, it's just another fun pastime. So yeah, that's about all I've been making this week. I've done a little bit of reading, gotten back to my Agatha Christie, Murder in the Mews. Yeah, in the Mews. And it's also called Dead Man's Mirror. I think that might have been the British title for it. It's actually a collection of 4 stories that feature Hercule Poirot. So I just finished the first of the 4. So that's been good. Had lots going on this week, and it kind of felt like I didn't get a lot of crafting done, but when I look at what I have accomplished, I guess that's not entirely true. I did have a doctor's appointment last Monday as a follow-up to the one I'd had the week before, and discussed test results, etc. And so what I'm dealing with is either associated with, related to menopause or thyroid. And I guess there's a lot of crossover in symptoms, and so it's a matter of figuring out what's going on and then how to treat it. So in a period of kind of treatment/observation. Continuing to take iron, which definitely is helping, but still find myself kind of worn out and trying to listen to my body and take a nap if necessary. And I find when I do, I just seem to just zonk, so I must really still need it. And then I've discovered, or we found out, my blood pressure is also elevated for some reason, so that's another thing I have to monitor and I guess decide what to do about. I've always been really healthy, and so I'm not used to having to worry about so many different things, but overall I feel quite good, and kind of trying, well, it's a good time anyway. The beginning of the year, we all sort of make resolutions, or at least have goals to take better care of ourselves. So the timing in that sense is pretty good. So I started yesterday. I've talked before about classical stretch or eccentrics, and so I won't go into it again, but there's a 30-day health challenge that began yesterday, so it seemed like a good time to jump into that. I've put a link to it on the show notes, so that if you're interested in learning more about the health challenge itself or classical stretch/eccentrics, you can find the information there. So that's my goal, is to, over the next 30 days, do a workout every day, and if I have to miss a day, do 2 on one day to make up for it. I would like to walk a few times every week. I was really good. I started out yesterday and with intentions of walking again this morning. Then I got up and it was dark and cold and rainy, and I wimped out. And it still hasn't gotten any better since. So I am realistic to know that I will not walk every day, but if I can aim for several days a week, plus I'm still curling up till the end of March, so that's always a good workout with the sweeping. So I'm going to try do my classical stretch workouts more regularly, beginning with this health challenge. Walk a few times a week, or at least get some aerobic exercise of some sort several times a week. Drink less wine and more water. And I always try to eat, or it's always in my mind that I should eat healthily. So it's not a new goal for me. Sometimes I do better than others, but it's just a reminder to think about what I'm eating and why I'm eating it. Am I really hungry, or is it just sweet and tastes good? That kind of thing. So hopefully what I'm hoping is that some of these health issues will motivate me to take better care of myself, and the two together, just like I say, it seems like the timing is good to focus on personal health at the moment. So that's what I'm going to try and do. I say try because we all know how hard it is to stick to all that stuff we're supposed to do. Last week, or a week ago, or 2 weeks, whatever it was, so when I made my doctor's appointment, my initial doctor's appointment, it reminded me that I was overdue for my mammogram, so I made that appointment right after. So I had that on Tuesday, so I'm good for another year. And it's silly because, my mom's a breast cancer survivor, and she would have been in her, I think in her 40s, late 40s, when she got it. Is that right? No, I guess more in her 50s. So that's, where I am. And I should be more diligent than I am. And I'm not. So again, reminder, take care of ourselves, right? Debated whether to tell you this story or not, but why not? You're all my friends. I'm going to preface it by talking about two things that happened before Christmas. So one thing is that my mom said one day she was in her bathroom off of her bedroom at home, and she heard my dad say hello. And my dad passed away, it'll be 3 years ago in June. So she just said it. She heard it as clear as day, and of course he wasn't there. So she was telling my sister about this at Christmas time, and my sister and her daughter-in-law kind of looked at each other, and my sister-in-law told my mom a story of being, I think she was in a mall, and saw a man approach who looked like my dad. And she said she obviously, her face must have shown her emotions, because the man actually stopped to ask her if she was okay. And it was just a very strange experience. So when I went for my mammogram, it's at the x-ray department in the hospital, and you have to sit down, I had to sit down and wait and fill out a form and stuff. And I glanced up, and there was a man waiting on a stretcher, obviously waiting for an x-ray or to be taken back to his room. And just the way, the angle he was at and the way he looked like my dad, only a little bit older. And I just, it just caught me by surprise, and I just kind of didn't want to look, just kind of collecting myself, and then I kept sneaking looks at him, and I just couldn't get over how much he looked like him, and it was just a very strange feeling. Now, just before I went in for my appointment, someone, he was trying to sit up. He wanted a glass of water, and somebody came and brought it to him. And when he sat up and he was at a different angle, he actually didn't look like my dad at all. But that initial way he was lying and the angle he was looking at, whew, I mean, it just does your heart does like little pitter-patter. At the same time, it almost felt like a bit of a gift to kind of get to look at him again. So it didn't upset me incredibly, but it certainly was emotional. Anyway, that was just strange that we've all had these sort of incidents, in the last month or two. Just very strange. I guess he's gone, but not forgotten, right? Trying to think what else. Oh, yeah. So on the weekend, this past weekend, there was a ladies' bonspiel at the curling club. And half of our team was going to be away, so we weren't going to go in as a team, but myself and the remaining member of the team, we volunteered to do the breakfast for it. Now, when I say breakfast, it's just muffins and fruit and cheese and loaves, coffee, etc. So it wasn't, cooking up bacon and eggs or anything. So we spent a good part of Friday making a bunch of muffins, and then we went in early Saturday morning to set up. And then once the setup was all, the baking and the setup and everything was all done, it was pretty easy. It's just making sure plates are, or the food's replenished, etc., and doing cleanup. So it wasn't too difficult, and it was kind of fun. I've never been in a bonspiel, and I think just sort of seeing the kind of excitement and the togetherness and such. I think I want to try, and maybe next year we'll all be there and we can enter, or maybe there's always a few different ones during the year. Maybe we'll get a team together and go in one. I think it would be a lot of fun. But was I ever wiped after that? I didn't, as long as I was going, I was fine. And then I got home and had lunch, and I was just so tired. But my sister-in-law had asked me if I'd help her with a sewing problem. So I headed over there Saturday afternoon, and we figured out what she needed pretty quickly. So we had a little visit, and then I came home, and then I crashed. So I had a good long nap Saturday afternoon, kind of recharged the batteries. And then Sunday was pretty lazy day. My husband finally got the Christmas lights down now that the most of the snow's melted. There's the odd pile still around, but it's generally gone. So he was able to get the ladder out, get Christmas lights taken down. And when we went and saw went to my daughter's before we went grocery shopping, to stop there and had a little visit with her and the kids. So that was good to see them. And then that was about it for the weekend. Pretty. Sunday was pretty laid back. We're gonna have some change. A big change in our household coming up. Our oldest son is going to be moving back for a while. He and my nephew have been renting a basement suite in a house. I've been quite happy there, but the house has been sold, and so they have to move. Technically, they could stay till their lease is up in April, but the current owner of the house did make quite a generous offer to them if they would move out early, so that the new owners can come into an empty house. And so they've taken him up on that. But my nephew's going to move in with a friend in a neighboring city. And that kind of leaves my son kind of in a bit of a lurch. He doesn't have any other friends that are kind of in the same boat. He would like to buy a place, and there's just because he's single income, there's a lot that's out of reach. So he's hoping that the more things will open up in the market with spring coming. Plus, if he moves home for a few months, that gives him a chance to save up a little bit more money. So yeah, we're gonna have we're not gonna be empty nesters for a little while. He's super easy to live with, so I'm not worried about that, and I think he'll stick to himself quite a bit because that's what he always tends to do anyway. His room will be downstairs, and there's a bathroom down there right across from his. So, he'll have kind of his own space down there, and there's family rooms next to there. So he's got a lot of, he can keep to himself down there and have quite a bit of space to do his thing, and we'll, our upstairs will mostly be up here. So I don't anticipate it being that inconvenient or that different. It'll be kind of strange having another body around on a regular basis, but if it can help him out, then we're happy to do it. And then I guess just coming up to, well, he's going to be moving in this coming weekend, but we're going to be gone up to see my mom. Her birthday is next week, next Monday, I guess, the 29th. So we always try and go up somewhere around her birthday. So we're going to do that. We'll probably go up, well, we will. We're planning to go up Friday, kind of late afternoon, stay over Friday night, Saturday night, come home Sunday. So we'll have a nice little visit with her. We'll go out for dinner on Saturday night and play cards probably. She always enjoys when we come up because she likes to play cards. And, it's hard to do that on your own other than solitaire. So we always have a good visit with her. And I no doubt we'll take a drive out to the family cabins. And it's always fun seeing them in the winter time with snow, because we spend most of the time up in the spring and summer. So quite different then. So yeah, so I need to cast on a pair of socks so I can have those as a project for the car, some plain knitting, so that I have to put some thought into what yarn I want to do for that. So yeah, I guess that's about it that's going on in my life. Hopefully life is good where you are, that you're getting lots of time to do what you love. Hopefully the weather is better than here. It's just so dark and dreary and rainy. But I mean, it is winter, and this is our typical winter weather. Snow for us is atypical. So, yeah, it's just hard to get really happy when you see this dark, gray, gloomy sky out there. But it's good to be inside, nice and cozy. Anyway, I'm just blabbering now, so I will say goodbye. Wish you a good week. And I should be back, I'm hoping, next Tuesday or Wednesday. So I will see you then. Take care until then. Bye.